Halloween's supposed to be candy, costumes, and chaos, but every year someone calls the cops on inflatable ghosts and fog machines. From HOA letters about non-approved pumpkins to neighbors reporting demonic bubble machines, these are 56 real Halloween complaints that prove some people are allergic to fun. Grab your candy, lock the door, and witness how one plastic skeleton can spark a full-blown neighborhood meltdown. 1. A homeowner in Ohio called the police after spotting what they thought was a body hanging from a neighbor's tree. It was actually a prop from a horror store made of rubber and newspaper. The neighbor insisted it looked too fresh and accused the family of creating psychological terror for the community. The police arrived, touched the dummy with a stick, and left while the complainer stood in disbelief. The next morning, she called again, saying, "The dummy had changed positions overnight," the officer said. "Wind exists." She said, "Evil does too." 2. In a Florida suburb, a man filed a formal complaint with his homeowners association about a neighbor's giant inflatable spider. He claimed the creature was demonic and was staring directly into his living room window. The neighbor rotated it slightly. The man then complained again, saying, now it was mocking him from a different angle. The HOA sent a letter asking the homeowner to consider spiritual sensitivity. He replied with a sign that read, "Beware of cursed arachnids." No one has made eye contact with him since. 3. A family in Oregon was reported for suspicious smoke and strange noises coming from their yard. The caller believed it was a satanic ritual involving chanting and unholy vapors. It turned out to be a malfunctioning fog machine placed next to a Bluetooth speaker that kept looping Halloween sound effects. The responding officer found 2 kids trying to fix it with duct tape. The caller refused to accept the explanation and spent the next 3 nights sitting on his porch with binoculars waiting for demons that never came. His wife moved to her sister's house for the weekend. 4. A woman in Texas called city code enforcement to complain that her neighbor's skeleton display violated building height regulations because one of the skeletons was climbing the roof. She claimed it posed a serious falling hazard and could injure trick-or-treaters. When the inspector arrived, he found the display roped securely and entirely made of foam. The woman argued that safety rules applied to all structures, including bone-related art. The officer laughed, wrote "no violation," and left. She then posted on the neighborhood app, warning everyone about unregulated skeletons haunting local property values. 5. An elderly man in Arizona contacted animal control after hearing what he believed was a werewolf howl echoing every 15 minutes from the house. Across the street, it was actually a motion sensor speaker that triggered a sound effect. Whenever someone walked near the yard, the old man said it was disrupting his meditation routine and upsetting his pet turtle. He requested the homeowners receive a citation for auditory aggression. The responding officer recorded the sound for evidence and later used it as his ringtone during night patrols. The turtle reportedly recovered faster than the old man did. 6. In a small town in Colorado, a man reported his neighbor for building what he described as a full-scale haunted torture chamber. Inside their garage, the sounds of screams, chains, and eerie moans echoed every evening. He said it was damaging his sleep and mental balance. Officers arrived to find a family-friendly haunted house setup, complete with motion lights and a fog machine. The homeowner's kids were testing their sound effects before trick-or-treat night. The man insisted it was psychological warfare. The police left with free candy samples while he filed a follow-up report for excessive spookiness. 7. A woman in Washington claimed her neighbor's decorations were disrupting wildlife. She said the glowing skeleton lights were confusing, migrating birds, and causing insomnia in local owls. The neighbor offered to turn the lights off earlier, but she argued the damage was already done. The local wildlife officer visited and found zero evidence of nocturnal chaos, just a raccoon eating marshmallows from a candy bowl. The woman still demanded compensation for emotional distress caused by imaginary disoriented owls. Her complaint was filed under decorative wildlife interference. 8. In a fancy neighborhood in California, a man filed a formal HOA complaint because his neighbor's Halloween display featured zombies that he said looked too cheerful. He argued that zombies should appear tragic and lifeless, not happy and dancing. The homeowner explained. It was a family-friendly theme, inspired by a children's movie, but the man insisted the joyful zombies were historically inaccurate. The HOA sent a reminder about creative expression, not being subject to mood regulation. The man later built his own display with grim, silent corpses that scared his own mailman. The neighborhood voted it most depressing yard of the year. 9. A woman in New York called emergency services after hearing what she believed were blood-curdling screams from the house next door. Police arrived prepared for a crime scene only to find a motion sensor prop that screamed. Whenever someone walked by, she insisted it was psychological torture designed to ruin her meditation schedule. Officers left, but she later complained again when the prop began laughing instead of screaming. The final report listed it as unresolved seasonal sound conflict, and the neighbor changed the prop to a mooing cow for irony. 10. In Ohio, a teacher reported her neighbor's decorations for promoting witchcraft. The display included cauldrons, broomsticks, and glowing runes. She claimed her students were being spiritually corrupted by seeing it on their way to school. Code enforcement arrived to find everything made of paper and foam. The teacher argued the symbols could open real portals. The officer said the only thing open was the neighbor's garage door. She promised to pray for him and left. He later told reporters it was the most educational inspection he had all year. 11. A man in Michigan complained that his neighbor's fog machine was triggering his car alarm. Every night, he said the moisture in the air was confusing his vehicle's sensors. He demanded police issue a citation for technological interference. The officer explained fog was not a criminal offense. The man later tried to prove his theory by setting off his own fog machine in the driveway. The alarm went off again, confirming only that he needed a new car battery. His neighbors applauded the experiment from their porch. 12. A woman in Nevada complained that her neighbor's pumpkin carving contest was a safety hazard. She said the sight of so many sharp knives in one yard created a violent atmosphere and traumatized her children. She called the police 3 times during the event. The responding officer stayed long enough to judge the pumpkins and declared the neighbor's cat-shaped design the winner. The woman then reported him for bias. The police report listed the call type as competitive pumpkin anxiety. 13. In Georgia, a man accused his neighbor of witch impersonation after she dressed as a witch to hand out candy. He argued that the outfit constituted spiritual fraud and claimed it disturbed his faith-based peace. He demanded the Hoa fine her for moral misrepresentation. The Hoa declined, citing lack of jurisdiction over fictional identities. The man later tried to organize a community prayer circle, which only his cat attended. He reported the absence of others as signs of societal decay. 14. A couple in Oregon filed a complaint that their neighbor's Halloween decorations caused emotional distress because a plastic clown decoration resembled a former coworker. They demanded it be taken down immediately. The neighbor offered to put a hat on it. They said the hat made it worse. The Hoey suggested closing their curtains. They replied that the curtain fabric was too thin to block trauma. The clown remained. The police marked it as domestic decor dispute. 15. A man in Kansas reported his neighbor for illegal burial after seeing several mounds of dirt in the front yard. He assumed they were graves marked with plastic tombstones. The responding officer found the homeowner planting bulbs for spring flowers. He was told to calm down, but insisted horticulture and horror should never mix. The homeowner gave him a tulip bulb. As proof of innocence, he took it as evidence and wrote burial not confirmed under unusual complaint. 16. In Florida, a retiree reported his neighbor for emotional harassment because their decorations included a ghost that moved in the wind and seemed to wave at him. Every morning, he said the ghost's gesture felt mocking and ruined. His breakfast routine, the homeowner explained. It was tied to a fishing line. The man refused to believe it was coincidence and called it intentional haunting. After 3 visits, the officer wrote simple conclusion: wind still undefeated. 17. In Arizona, a woman contacted the city claiming her neighbor was conducting secret government experiments because their Halloween display included green lights and bubbling tubes. She said the strange glow was giving her headaches and attracting moths. The health inspector arrived and discovered it was a homemade alien laboratory theme powered by glow sticks and dry ice. She demanded they be fined for tampering with public radiation safety. The inspector laughed and took pictures for his kids. Science fair presentation. The woman later left a handwritten note on their door warning them that the moths were federal spies. The homeowner framed the note and labeled it Exhibit A in case the aliens ever did show up. 18. A man in Illinois filed a complaint after his neighbor's skeletons were dressed in business suits. He claimed the display mocked the unemployed and promoted classist values. He said the skeletons symbolized capitalist oppression and requested they be redressed in casual clothing for equality. The neighbor replaced one suit with pajamas, which only infuriated him more. The Hui discussed it briefly before agreeing that skeleton attire was not covered under bylaws. The man boycotted trick-or-treating that year and handed out job applications. Instead, kids ranked his house the worst on the street, and local teens later pranked him by giving his mailbox a tie. 19. In Pennsylvania, an elderly woman called animal control after spotting what she thought was a massive spider crawling across her neighbor's roof. The officer arrived to find a lifelike inflatable tarantula deflating in slow motion due to a small tear. She insisted the creature was breathing and demanded it be euthanized. The officer demonstrated it was just air escaping, but she said it was faking death to avoid capture. The next day, she taped a Bible verse to their door about vigilance against creeping beasts. The homeowner responded by patching the spider and adding sunglasses. The officer later drove by and saluted the inflatable, saying it looked relaxed now. 20. A homeowner in Colorado reported their neighbor for public indecency because one of the skeletons in their display was wearing only a hat and boots. The officer arrived expecting something serious, and instead found the skeleton posed mid-dance with a sign that read, "Yeehaw." The complainant said it was offensive to community decency and made his dog uncomfortable. The officer pointed out that skeletons have no anatomical detail to offend anyone. The man said it was the principle, not the pelvis. The report concluded with a note stating complaint. Closed skeleton remains clothed in spirit only. 21. In Minnesota, a man accused his neighbor of practicing necromancy because he saw candlelight flickering near tombstones. At midnight when police arrived, they found battery candles surrounding a plastic zombie hand. The homeowner explained. It was for ambience. The man insisted they check for real corpses. He said the grave markers looked too personalized. The officer read one that said, "Here lies my free time," and laughed. The neighbor invited them for cocoa. The complainant stood across the street, filming while whispering evidence gathered. He later uploaded it to social media, titled Proof of Backyard Resurrection. It received 6 views and 1 sarcastic like from the police department account. 22. A woman in Oregon filed an HOA violation because her neighbor's Halloween theme was too educational. She said the display featuring labeled skeleton anatomy charts and historical ghost trivia was turning the street into a museum and ruining the spooky vibe. She demanded the HOA restrict fact-based decor. The homeowner, a retired teacher, added a sign that said, "Learning is terrifying." The woman doubled down, claiming her children were asking too many scientific questions about bones. She later created her own counter-display showing cartoon ghosts. With the caption, "Ignorance is bliss," the local newspaper named it the most ironic Halloween feud of the year. 23. In Tennessee, a man called 911 to report screams echoing through the woods behind his home. Officers arrived with flashlights and discovered a set of motion-triggered speakers playing haunted forest sounds. He claimed it was psychological warfare by his neighbor, who knew he had anxiety. They tested the setup and found it activated only when deer passed by. The man said the deer were accomplices and should be relocated. Animal control declined the request and noted no criminal intent, just excessive creativity. The officer wrote a closing remark that said, "Deer, not guilty man, remains jumpy." 24. A woman in New Mexico reported that her neighbor's decorations had summoned spirits because her smart home lights were flickering. She claimed her doorbell rang itself 3 times each night. After midnight, an electrician found her Wi-Fi router overloaded from streaming ghost documentaries. She still blamed supernatural interference. The next morning, she sprinkled salt around her house and mailed her neighbor a cease and desist letter against paranormal activity. He responded with a thank you note and a coupon for new batteries. Her lights flickered again that night, but this time it was a power surge across the entire block. 25. In Utah, a man filed a complaint saying his neighbor's talking pumpkin insulted him. He said each time he walked by it said, "Welcome, foolish mortal," which he considered a targeted personal attack. The homeowner explained. It was a pre-programmed motion sensor from a store. The man demanded the pumpkin apologize in writing. The Hawaii ignored his request, so he recorded the pumpkin repeatedly and edited the clips into a video titled Verbal Abuse by Produce. It gained brief online attention, mostly from people laughing at him. The pumpkin continued greeting guests, unfazed by fame or controversy. 26. A woman in North Carolina claimed her neighbor's yard display had too many eyes. She said the illuminated eyeball decorations were creating an atmosphere of surveillance and making her feel monitored. At all hours, she wrote a 5-page letter to the HOA referencing privacy laws and demanding immediate removal. The Hoa president visited and said the only eyes he saw belonged to inflatable monsters. The woman told him he was part of the system and accused him of aiding ocular intimidation. The homeowner responded by adding sunglasses to every eyeball. The Hoa marked the case visually. Excessive complaint not sustained. 27. In Alaska, a man complained that his neighbor's fake snowman display confused his sled dogs who refused to pass the yard. He said the snowman's glowing blue eyes hypnotized them and caused emotional damage to the pack. The officer examined the scene and determined the dogs were distracted by the bacon-scented air freshener the homeowner used to mask the smell of fog juice. The man demanded compensation and treats for trauma. The report concluded snowman harmless dogs. Hungry bacon smell remains unsolved. The officer returned later for cocoa and confirmed the snowman still smiling peacefully. 28. A couple in Wisconsin accused their neighbor of starting a cult after seeing a group of children chanting in the yard during sunset. They were practicing a choreographed Halloween dance routine. The couple filmed it and sent it to the Hoa as proof of spiritual gatherings. The Hoa thanked them and never responded. The kids later performed the same dance at the community center. The couple boycotted the event and hung a banner, reading "Beware Organized Fun." The children thought it was part of the decorations and took pictures under it, smiling brightly. 29. In Virginia, a man called the fire department after seeing a flickering orange glow behind his neighbor's curtains, convinced the house was ablaze. Firefighters broke down the door to find a perfectly safe living room with a small projector casting flames as part of a haunted house theme. The homeowner thanked them for the quick response and offered candy. The man refused to apologize, saying better safe than sorry. The fire chief agreed, but asked him next time to knock, before calling an entire engine crew. He later received a friendly note from the department reading, "Appreciate enthusiasm, control, urgency." 30. A woman in Texas complained that her neighbor's zombie band display violated noise ordinances even though the instruments were plastic. She said the sight of them made her imagine loud music which disturbed her sleep. She insisted that silence with visual chaos still counts as auditory assault code. Enforcement arrived confused and left without issuing any citation. The woman then tried to file a mental noise pollution claim at City Hall. They suggested meditation. She responded with a 30-minute monologue about zombie decibels and was politely escorted out. The zombies continued their eternal silent concert unbothered. 31. In Colorado, a woman contacted the Homeowners Association claiming her neighbor's graveyard display had created an unsafe emotional environment for her yoga group. She said the fake tombstones with names like "Rest in Pieces" and "Gone Golfing" were disrupting her inner peace. During sunrise meditation, the Ho representative visited the site and found soft background music playing from hidden speakers and plastic bones scattered around. He suggested relocating her yoga mat. She refused, saying her property's energy field was now permanently haunted. The neighbor replaced the sign with one that read, "Namaste Forever," and offered a free class. She filed a second complaint for sarcasm-based vandalism. The Hoa listed it as grievance unresolvable due to metaphysical complications. 32. In Florida, a man called the police to report his neighbor's giant inflatable ghost had collapsed onto his carport. He claimed it was an act of property invasion by supernatural means. Officers arrived to find the decoration deflated from a power outage covering half the driveway. The homeowner apologized and offered to move it. The man insisted it be arrested for trespassing. The officer tried explaining physics, but he kept repeating the word boundaries. Eventually, they folded the inflatable neatly and placed it on the lawn. The man took photos for evidence and labeled them "Spirit Attack Documentation." The officer's final report read, "Victim Unharmed Ghost Cooperative." 33. In New York, a tenant filed a complaint with building management after her upstairs neighbor used scented fog for a hallway Halloween setup. She said the smell was infiltrating her apartment and inducing prophetic dreams about candy corn. The superintendent found a plug-in diffuser labeled "Haunted Vanilla." The woman said the spirits were communicating through fragrance and demanded. A priest management offered her an air purifier. Instead, she rejected it, saying, "Modern technology cannot cleanse the supernatural." She later burned sage in the hallway, triggering the smoke alarm, which resulted in another complaint from herself for fire harassment. 34. A couple in Kansas reported their neighbor's haunted corn maze because they said the layout symbolized dark rituals. They pointed to the spiral design as proof of occult activity. The neighbor explained it was copied from a local amusement park maze. The couple insisted their dog refused to enter the yard. Out of spiritual awareness, the code officer toured the maze and got lost for 7 minutes, confirming only poor navigation. He recommended directional signs and left. The couple staged a neighborhood petition to ban circular patterns, which received 1 signature their own. The maze won a local creativity award. 35. In Ohio, an elderly man called animal control because his neighbor's animatronic witch laughed every 5 minutes and his parrot started mimicking it. He said the constant cackling was ruining his bird's vocabulary and damaging community decency. The officer visited and complimented the witch's realistic sound system. The parrot responded by laughing hysterically. The man glared and demanded counseling services for traumatized pets. Animal control declined and suggested turning on a radio. The parrot began saying, "Help me," in a witch voice every morning and soon became a local celebrity while the man invested in noise, canceling headphones and a stronger sense of irony. 36. A woman in Michigan complained to the environmental department that her neighbor's dry ice fog was contributing to global warming. She provided no data but cited instinct and a headache. The inspector explained that carbon dioxide from such displays was minimal. She called it propaganda. From big fog, the neighbor offered to switch to a bubble machine. She said bubbles were microplastics. In disguise, she later placed handwritten signs around the street reading "Stop. Atmospheric deception." The local paper featured her as activist of the week in satire. She still insists the clouds look different now. 37. In Utah, a man reported his neighbor's holographic ghost projection for identity theft. He said the digital ghost resembled him from college and was damaging his reputation among trick-or-treaters. The homeowner explained. It was a generic stock video, purchased online. The man said coincidence was mathematically impossible. He demanded royalties for the likeness and threatened to sue the ghost projection company. They offered him a 10% discount coupon. Instead, he posted angry updates on social media, until his friends pointed out the ghost had better hair. He filed one last report stating theft. Unresolved ego injured. 38. In Georgia, a resident accused his neighbor of spreading false historical information through their decorations. The display included a colonial-era ghost holding a cell phone. The man said it disrespected American heritage and confused children about time travel rules. He requested a historical authenticity audit. The HOA declined, saying, creativity was not bound by centuries. He later staged his own historically correct Halloween with musket props and lanterns. His fake horse collapsed mid-event, scaring everyone into running home. The newspaper called it a spirited but inaccurate performance. His neighbor gave him a trophy labeled Ghost of Context. 39. In Washington, a woman complained that her neighbor's candy bowl used a robotic hand that grabbed too hard. She said it assaulted her wrist and left emotional bruises. The homeowner tested it, showing it was motion-activated and lightly tapped. She argued consent was required before mechanical contact. The officer declined to pursue charges. She returned later with a wrist brace and a handwritten list of boundary violations. The homeowner replaced the hand with a plastic tentacle. She called it a downgrade in empathy and banned her kids from trick-or-treating until machines learned manners. 40. In North Dakota, a man called his utility company claiming his neighbor's glowing jack-o'-lanterns were draining his electricity. He said the pumpkins were leaching energy through shared soil lines. The technician explained, solar-powered lights have no wires. The man accused him of covering for pumpkin cartels. He dug a small trench around his yard for protection. The neighbor filled it with candy corn as a peace offering. He said it was sabotage from within the pumpkins kept glowing. The report ended with technician exhausted, client electrified. 41. In Louisiana, a woman contacted animal control because her neighbor's skeleton horse frightened her. Chihuahua, she said the dog developed anxiety and refused to go on walks near that property. The officer offered to introduce the dog to the skeleton to prove it was harmless. She screamed that exposure therapy was unethical. The homeowner later added a saddle and named the display Friendly Bones, which attracted visitors for photos. The woman claimed they were exploiting canine trauma and filed a petition to ban skeletal equines. The officer wrote, "No threat. Observed horse, still dead. Dog still dramatic." 42. In Arizona, a homeowner received a complaint for using wind chimes shaped like bats. The neighbor said the jingling sound was summoning negative lunar forces and giving her migraines. A code officer inspected and found ordinary metal chimes producing soft tinkling. She said that frequency matched occult wavelengths. The officer suggested earplugs. She accused him of being under bat influence. The homeowner added a sign, reading "Welcome Lunar Frequencies." She filed another report for sarcasm. He left both of them pamphlets about meditation and noise tolerance labeled, "Conclusion unresolved due to cosmic disagreement." 43. In Maryland, a teenager decorated their yard with a coffin that opened and released mist. The neighbor across the street panicked and called police screaming that a vampire was escaping. Officers arrived to find a fog timer malfunctioning. The woman insisted they drive a stake through the device. The police declined. She later sprinkled garlic powder on the sidewalk, which attracted stray cats. Her son told local news. His mom defeated darkness. The 44. In Oregon, an elderly woman claimed her neighbors' light-up ghosts were violating privacy because their eyes pointed at her windows. She taped black paper across her panes and wrote letters to local officials demanding anti-gays legislation. The mayor's office sent her a thank you card for civic engagement and nothing else. The neighbor rotated the ghosts slightly. She then insisted they winked sarcastically. She started wearing sunglasses indoors and told friends she was under spectral surveillance. The city closed the case for lack of tangible haunting evidence. 45. In Texas, a man complained to the county about a neighbor's cornstalk decorations, saying they posed a fire hazard because the stalks looked too dry. He poured water on them himself. During the night, the neighbor caught him and called police. He argued it was public service firefighting. The officer pointed out trespassing. The man said he was preventing imaginary flames. The neighbor responded by adding a fake fire truck to the display. He called that provocation. The officer concluded both parties' overly flammable case. Extinguished humor intact. 46. In Oregon, a man filed a complaint because his neighbor's graveyard decorations included a tombstone. With his exact first name on it, he said it was a targeted threat disguised as humor. The homeowner explained it was part of a random name generator he used online, the man said. Coincidence was mathematically impossible and demanded it be replaced immediately. The neighbor swapped the name for Karen and the man accused him of mockery. The Hoey told them both to stop haunting each other. He later printed a sign that said "Alive and Watching" and planted it in his yard. The local newspaper labeled the feud "Eternal Rest," pending neighbors restless forever. 47. In Nebraska, a woman reported her neighbor to animal control because their animatronic werewolf howled every hour, and she believed it was communicating with coyotes. She claimed it was organizing a canine uprising and that her poodle was acting suspiciously. The officer arrived to find a battery-powered wolf triggered by motion sensors. He howled back just to test it and laughed. The woman called that unprofessional and accused him of joining the rebellion. The neighbor dressed the werewolf in sunglasses afterward. She said it was now the leader of the pack case. Closed harmony among humans and howls restored. 48. In California, a resident filed a report claiming their neighbor's lawn skeletons were violating health codes because none of them wore masks. He argued that if living people had to protect themselves, so should the undead. The health inspector explained public safety laws do not extend to plastic bones. The man said this was discrimination against the respirationally challenged. The neighbor added small paper masks to the skeletons and a sign that read "Safety First, Bones." Later, the complainant then said the masks were politically charged. The city marked the file under general confusion category and suggested everyone breathe normally. 49. In New Jersey, a woman reported her neighbor for littering after plastic bats. From their decorations landed in her swimming pool, she claimed they were contaminating her water with vampire residue. The homeowner offered to remove them immediately, but she refused, demanding an environmental audit. The city inspector found 3 foam bats floating peacefully and a single rubber fang. She argued they were spreading nocturnal bacteria and requested a chlorine compensation fund. The report ended, stating pool sanitized bats. Cleared superstition remains active. 50. In Montana, a man called the police, insisting that his neighbor's yard display was sending hidden messages in Morse code through flickering string lights. The officer checked and discovered the lights were simply faulty. He claimed the pattern spelled out, "Help me buried alive," and accused the neighbor of being an undercover illusionist. The officer reset the timer, which stopped the blinking. But the man said the silence was suspicious. The next week, he installed his own coded lights, reading, I see you. The neighborhood lighting war lasted until Christmas when everyone ran out of extension cords. 51. A homeowner in Ohio was accused by his neighbor of causing psychological distress with a 10-foot inflatable vampire that deflated slowly every morning. The neighbor said watching it collapse felt like reliving emotional trauma from his divorce. The homeowner apologized and offered to deflate it faster. He said the process symbolized despair. The HOA responded by suggesting a counseling hotline and declaring the vampire artistically therapeutic. The man later put up an inflatable therapist chair beside it. The community voted his lawn most emotionally expressive Halloween exhibit. 52. In Nevada, a woman complained that her neighbor's fog machine was creating moisture that made her hair frizz. She called it a cosmetic crime and said the city owed her reimbursement for salon expenses. The code officer explained, "Humidity cannot be fined." She responded by bringing a jar of captured fog as evidence, which turned out to be empty. He thanked her for her contribution to science. She later started a neighborhood group called Citizens Against Damp Air membership. The fog continued without incident, while her jar became a paperweight labeled "Justice Pending." 53. In Wisconsin, a man accused his neighbor of satanic coding after seeing their digital countdown sign that read, "3 days till Halloween." He said the glowing numbers represented an apocalyptic prophecy and demanded it be taken down. The homeowner tried to explain it was for candy distribution planning. He covered the sign with a smiley face sticker. The man insisted it was now hiding deeper, meaning he eventually spray-painted "Blessed" over his mailbox and claimed victory against numerical evil. The police report ended with phrase complaint involves arithmetic fear, no follow-up required. 54. In Idaho, a woman contacted wildlife authorities saying her neighbor's scarecrow was emotionally tormenting local crows. She said the birds looked offended whenever they flew by. Officers observed the area for 20 minutes and saw no reaction from any bird. She argued the silence proved deep trauma and requested therapy sessions for the flock. They advised her to consider other hobbies. She later replaced her mailbox with a birdhouse labeled Emotional Support Center. The crows ignored it entirely. Peace and feathers restored, case closed. 55. In Colorado, a college student filed a noise complaint against his neighbor's haunted doorbell. He said the spooky laugh startled him every time food deliveries arrived, ruining his appetite. The officer pressed the button and jumped slightly but called it harmless. The student said emotional appetite. Suppression was real harm. The homeowner offered to switch to a ghostly whisper mode. He said whispering was worse because it lingered in the soul. The officer recorded the laugh for evidence and kept it as his new notification tone. Irony achieved, satisfaction denied. 56. In Washington, a man called the police to report a suspected hostage situation after seeing silhouettes thrashing near his neighbor's window. Officers surrounded the house, guns drawn, only to find the homeowner wearing a virtual reality headset fighting zombies in a horror game. He apologized mid-swing. The man refused to believe it was virtual and demanded a full psychological assessment. The officers took turns playing for 5 minutes, declared the graphics excellent, and closed the call under category simulation confusion. Neighborhood laughter followed, peace temporarily restored. So that's how Halloween turned into a battlefield of fog machines, fake skeletons, and full-grown adults calling the cops on inflatable ghosts. If you made it this far, you've officially survived the pettiest holiday horror show ever caught on camera. Every one of these 56 complaints proves that the scariest monster on the block is always the neighbor with Wi-Fi and free time. If this gave you a laugh, hit like before someone reports your joy. Tap subscribe for more real-life absurdity every single week, and drop your own ridiculous Halloween story in the comments. Grab your candy, stay weird, and remember, here on Complainix, even the fake skeletons have drama.